Okay, good evening, all.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Today, we will be discussing about discussing a text named "Towards a Feminist Poetics." It's an essay written by Elaine Showalter. It's a very significant essay in the context of feminism, feminist literary criticism, because it actually initiates a number of new critical positions for feminism. In the sense that she herself has classified feminist literary history of both criticism and also literature into different time periods, and she's analyzing and looking into it to understand how far feminism has been effective in dealing with the issues of women, and the actual purpose or the goal of feminism, which has actually started from Mary Wollstonecraft's time onwards, has been uh, keeping on changing on various times. So the purpose of feminism at a point when things was, I mean, the whole scenario of literary criticism was undergoing a phenomenal change, was her major concern, and that concern is actually addressed by calling into um, attention a very different, a very unique um, idea of feminism, a unique dimension for feminism, which differs from all the conventional notions of feminism. So we will see her positions and also her suggestions regarding this particular idea of feminism or dimension of feminism that she puts forward. And it is titled as Towards a Feminist Poetics. She calls her theoretical idea as feminist poetics than feminist criticism, and she's also making a comparison between both what is feminist poetics and feminist criticism. So we will look into it in detail now. I hope you might have got some time to skim through the material that I had shared with you in WhatsApp. Mm, if not, okay, you find some time to read it after the class. I have given some of the parts in the essay as bolded, so you can give special attention to those parts, which I have also included in the PPT. And it's very small essay, and it's very um, simple also, in the sense that it doesn't use it doesn't discuss very complicated ideas. Mostly it discusses historical references, and also it goes on very smoothly, very very sound essay, I will call it. Okay, let's go get into the essay now. Before that, we can get to know about the writer Elaine Showalter. She's a very celebrated feminist in 20th century. Born in January 22nd, the 21st, 1941, is an American literary critic, feminist, and writer on cultural and social issues. She influenced feminist literary criticism in the United States academia, developing the concept and practice of gynocriticism, a term describing the study of women as writers. We will see what is gynocriticism, and how is it differing from other forms of literary criticism, feminist criticism. We will see that. Her major works, A Literature of Her Own, that is the most celebrated work of her. Um, British women novelists from Emily Bronte to Doris Lessing. Second. Another important work is Towards a Feminist Poetics, Women's Writing and Writing About Women, The Female Malady, Women Madness and English Culture, 1985. These are some of the major works of Elaine Showalter, and I have given a very short bio of Showalter also. If you are interested, you can go for a detailed reading on the writer. It's available online. Now we'll get into the essay. Towards a Feminist Poetics. As I have already mentioned, ഞാൻ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞതുപോലെ ഇതൊരു പുതിയ ഒരു ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ചിന്താഗതിയിലേക്ക്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു തിയറട്ടിക്കൽ പൊസിഷനിലേക്കുള്ള ഒരു മാറ്റമാണ് ശരിക്കും ഈ എസ്സേയിലൂടെ എലൈൻ ഷോവാൾട്ടർ മുന്നോട്ട് വയ്ക്കുന്നത്. And she is also very critically analyzing what feminism was upholding for a for a long time, right from the Mary Wollstonecraft's publication of the Vindication of Rights of Women. That was actually a point of greater initiation for feminism on a major scale in mainstream context of literature. We know that before that there are many writers, but as a critic or maybe somebody who was coming forward and upholding the rights of women or speaking for the rights of women writers, and also women in general, who actually happened with or started to happen with Elaine Showalter, Mary Wollstonecraft. Then there onwards, there are major writers, or maybe there are many voices of criticism from the part from within the women's community itself, and they all had their own approaches towards feminism, their own goals also. Their goals also differed by the time, by the passage of time. Their goals also differed in different ways. So she is trying to make a historical reading of all these positions feminism actually has upheld throughout this time, and also she is asking for what kind of a diversion that feminism requires to take in order to fight, in order to reach into the ground level realities that a feminist criticism actually wanted to address. So ആ ഒരു ഡിറ്റർമിനേഷന്റെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ കൺവിക്ഷന്റെ ഭാഗമായിട്ടാണ് ഈ ഒരു എസ്സേ വരുന്നത്. ആദ്യം തന്നെ തുടക്കത്തിൽ തന്നെ എസ്സേയുടെ തുടക്കത്തിൽ തന്നെ ഷീ ഈസ് ട്രൈങ് ടു മേക്ക് എ കമന്റ് ഓൺ ദി ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസം. What is actually feminist criticism? She is dividing feminist criticism into two ways. First one, in feminist criticism, the first category of feminist criticism, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ feminist critical writings, actually consider, which is also called feminist criticism in general, actually considered women as a reader. So this was a mainstream feminist discourse, which she called feminist criticism, which was also placed against something called Gaia criticism that she has coined of herself. And what actually feminist criticism എന്ന് പറയുന്ന മേജർ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ്, ആ ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് ആണ് ശരിക്കും 20th സെഞ്ചുറിയിലെ ഫെമിനിസത്തിന്റെ ഒരു മേജർ ഫേസ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. അപ്പോ അക്കോർഡിംഗ് ടു എലൈൻ ഷോവാൾട്ടർ, ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസം എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ജാനർ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ ഒരു ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് ചെയ്തിരുന്നത് എന്താണെന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, ദേ കൺസിഡേർഡ് വിമൺ ആസ് എ റീഡർ, ആൻഡ് ബൈ കൺസിഡറിംഗ് വിമൺ ആസ് എ റീഡർ, they tried to analyze various aspects of the readership of women. I mean, when we consider women as a reader, there are various possibilities we can explore in that dimension, in that direction. So I have actually listed some of the major critical observations that the feminist criticism has made or has attempted to do in their critical discourses. ആദ്യത്തെ എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ വുമൺ ആസ് എ കൺസ്യൂമർ ഓഫ് മെയിൽ പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ്ഡ് ലിറ്ററേച്ചർ. സോ ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിക്സിനെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം അവരുടെ ആദ്യത്തെ ഒരു പൊസിഷൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആദ്യത്തെ ഒരു ക്രിട്ടിക്കൽ ഡയമെൻഷൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്, ടു ലുക്ക് വിമൻ ആസ് എ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ വുമൺ ആസ് എ കൺസ്യൂമർ ഓഫ് ദി മെയിൽ പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ്ഡ് ലിറ്ററേച്ചർ. സോ വുമണിനെ ഒരു മെയിൽ പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ്ഡ് ലിറ്ററേച്ചറിന്റെ ഒരു കൺസ്യൂമർ ആയിട്ട് കാണുക, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ കൺസ്യൂമർ ആയിട്ടാണ് സൊസൈറ്റി കാണുന്നത് എന്നൊരു പോയിന്റ് ആദ്യമായിട്ട് തന്നെ ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസം ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. രണ്ടാമത്, ഹൈപ്പോത്തിസിസ് ഓഫ് ഫീമെയിൽ റീഡർ ചേഞ്ചസ് അവർ അപ്രിഹെൻഷൻ ഓഫ് എ ഗിവൺ ടെക്സ്റ്റ്. അതായത് ദേ ഓൾസോ അനലൈസ്, ലൈക് ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസം ഓൾസോ അനലൈസ്ഡ് ഹൗ ദ ഹൈപ്പോത്തിസിസ് ഓഫ് എ ഫീമെയിൽ റീഡർ, ഹൈപ്പോത്തിസിസ് ഓഫ് എ ഫീമെയിൽ റീഡർ ഇൻ ദ സെൻസ്, if a male writer is writing something, he will definitely have a group of readers in his mind. So when he writes, and if it is for the community of women, he might have an appropriate, I mean, he might have a hypothetical audience. So that hypothetical audience and the idea of that hypothetical audience's response will definitely influence that male writer's content. സോ അതിനെക്കുറിച്ചും ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസം ഡീറ്റെയിൽ ആയിട്ട് പഠിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അതുകൂടാതെ ഇതൊരു ഹിസ്റ്റോറിക്കലി ഗ്രൗണ്ടഡ് എൻക്വയറി ആയിരുന്നു. ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസം എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ആ ഒരു ക്രിട്ടിക്കൽ ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് ഓഫ് ഫെമിനിസം ആക്ച്വലി വാസ് എ ഹിസ്റ്റോറിക്കൽ ഗ്രൗണ്ടഡ് എൻക്വയറി. അതായത് ദേ ഓൾസോ ഇൻവെസ്റ്റിഗേറ്റഡ്, as I have already mentioned, they also investigated the changes that happened, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ responses that happened at various points in the history of literature, the responses that has happened in the feminist literature itself at various points of history. And they also looked into the images and stereotypes of women in literature, and omissions and misconceptions about women in criticism. ഇതൊക്കെയാണ് അവരുടെ മേജർ കൺസേൺസ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഈ ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസത്തിന്റെ. They also looked into the fissures in male constructed literary history. Male constructed literary ഹിസ്റ്ററിയിലുള്ള പാളിച്ചകൾ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പോരായ്മകൾ, ഐ മീൻ ഗ്യാപ്പുകൾ എന്തൊക്കെയാണ്, അതിനെക്കുറിച്ചൊക്കെ അവർ പഠിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. ദ എക്സ്പ്ലോറേഷൻ ആൻഡ് മാനിപ്പുലേഷൻ ഓഫ് ദി ഫീമെയിൽ ഓഡിയൻസ് ഇൻ ദ പോപ്പുലർ കൾച്ചർ ആൻഡ് ഫിലിംസ്. They also deal with the exploitation and manipulation of female audience in popular cultures and popular culture and films. ഫിലിംസിലും പോപ്പുലർ കൾച്ചറിലും എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഫീമെയിൽ ഐഡന്റിറ്റി, സബ്ജക്ടിവിറ്റി അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഫീമെയിലിനെ ഒരു ഒബ്ജക്ടിഫിക്കേഷനിലൂടെ ഫീമെയിൽ എങ്ങനെ ഒബ്ജക്ടിഫൈ ചെയ്യപ്പെടുന്നു എന്നുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ ദേ ആർ ഡിസ്കസിങ്. ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസം ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ അനാലിസിസ് ഓഫ് വിമൻ ആസ് സയൻസ് ഇൻ സെമിയോട്ടിക് സിസ്റ്റം. അത് ബേസിക്കലി നമ്മൾ കാണുന്ന ഈ ഒബ്ജക്ടിഫിക്കേഷൻ തന്നെയാണ്. അത് ഹൗ ദ സ്ട്രീം ഓഫ് ഫാഷൻ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ദ സ്ട്രീം ഓഫ് മോഡലിംഗ് ഹാസ് how far the stream of modeling has objectified women, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ how far they have commodified women's body. ഇത്തരത്തിലുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ ഇവർ ഡീൽ ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ അനാലിസിസ് ഓഫ് വിമൻ ആസ് പൊളിറ്റിക്കൽ ആൻഡ് they are having political and theoretical affiliation to Marxist sociology and aesthetics. Marxist sociology ആണ് മെയിൻ ആയിട്ടുള്ളത്. So feminism, feminist criticism has the ideological affiliation towards Marxist sociology, Marxist theory at large. So ഈ ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസം എന്ന് പറയുന്ന മെയിൻ സ്ട്രീം ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ലിറ്റററി ക്രിറ്റിസിസത്തിന്റെ ഫീച്ചേഴ്സ് ആണ് ഞാനിപ്പോ പറഞ്ഞതെല്ലാം. ഇതാണ് അവർ ശരിക്കും ചെയ്യുന്നത്. ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്, അതായത് 60s-ലും 70s-ലും നമ്മൾ കാണുന്ന ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസം, 30s മുതൽ പറയുവാണെങ്കിൽ 30s മുതലുള്ള ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസത്തിന്റെ മേജർ കൺസേൺസ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഞാനിവിടെ ഈ ലിസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്ന പോയിന്റ്സ് ആണ്. സോ അതാണ് അവർ ബേസിക്കലി പഠിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരുന്നത്. ആൻഡ് വെൻ ഇറ്റ് കംസ് ടു എലൈൻ ഷോവാൾട്ടർ, ഷീ ഈസ് ടെലിംഗ് ദാറ്റ് feminist criticism, which is actually doing all these things that I have listed here, is not sufficient enough to address women in literature. That is not sufficient enough. That discourse is not sufficient enough. This discourse is not potential enough to express actually the concerns of women when it comes to the contemporary times. So in order to put forward or compose a kind of a solution for this problem, she proposes her idea called gynocriticism, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ her thought of theory called gynocriticism. So in gynocriticism, she says that we look at women as a writer, not as a reader. So here what they are doing is actually looking at women as a writer. അതിന്റെ കുറച്ച് പോയിന്റ്സ് ഞാൻ ഇവിടെ താഴെ ലിസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. So when we look at women as a writer, we look at women as a producer of a textual meaning with the history, themes, genres, structures of literature by women. So when we are shifting from the perspective of looking at women as a reader to the perspective of looking at women as a writer, we start to look at women as a producer of a textual meaning and also with the history, themes, genres, structures of literature by women. So women ഒരു മീനിങ്ങിന്റെ പ്രൊഡ്യൂസർ ആയിട്ട് നോക്കി കാണാനുള്ള ഒരു ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റി അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു സജഷൻ ആണ് ആക്ച്വലി ഗൈനോക്രിറ്റിസിസം മുമ്പോട്ട് വയ്ക്കുന്നത്. ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് വാട്ട് ആക്ച്വലി ഗൈനോക്രിറ്റിസിസം പ്രൊപ്പോസസ്. നോട്ട് ജസ്റ്റ് ആസ് എ പാസീവ് റീഡർ, റാദർ ഷീ ഈസ് someone who is also holding sway in the process of production of meaning. So that big role actually women plays was not addressed so far by the conventional criticism, which she calls as feminist criticism. So in order to draw much light upon this particular aspect of meaning production, which is done by women, she's telling that gynocriticism requires to be applied here. And മറ്റൊരു പോയിന്റ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് the psychodynamics of female creativity. So in gynocriticism, she is also proposing that gynocriticism will look at the psychodynamics of female creativity. The various elemental patterns, logics of female creativity, linguistics and the problems of a female language. So looking at language on a gendered base. When we come more in detail to the work of Showalter, other works, especially literature of their own, basically, we see that she is trying to identify a particular linguistic pattern and model or a linguistic design for female writings. And she is trying to formulate a structural pattern for that particular model of female language, or feminist language, or writings of women. അത്തരത്തിലൊരു വളരെ ഇൻ ഡീറ്റെയിൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ലിറ്റററി ക്രിറ്റിസിസത്തിന്റെ ഫ്രെയിംവർക്കാണ് ശരിക്കും എലൈൻ ഷോവാൾട്ടർ മുന്നോട്ട് വയ്ക്കുന്നത്. And also the trajectory of the individual and collective female literary career. So they are also looking at the female literary career, that which was never looked at ever in the literary history. Maybe some passive references might have happened in Virginia Woolf's A Room of Unsown. But apart from that, if you're looking at the feminist criticism, the so-called conventional feminist criticism for centuries, which has been existing for centuries, there was no particular focused reference on the literary career of a woman writer or the linguistic pattern, specialities of the linguistic patterns of female writers. And also they studies the particular writers and works. They take particular writers, they place them on a historical context and they study their works. That was another problem. They are again addressing this problem in the later times also, that if you are looking at the history of the feminist writers, we take them we take them, or we treat them as isolated writers. For example, if you're looking at Emily Bronte or the Bronte sisters, we don't give much reference to those writers who were also contemporaneous to them. There are many female writers at that point of time. Or if you're looking at Jane Austen, we are not paying much attention to the writers at that point of time. The female writers, there were many inferior female writers. That means there were a group of writers who were writing, group of female writers who were also writing, but we don't focus upon any of those writers, and we are taking them very specifically. We are locating them very specifically on a historical context. So this idea of looking at female writers exceptionally focused, female writers exceptionally isolated, is actually posed as a biggest problem that we always encounter in the traditional feminist literary criticism. That is okay, and gynocriticism is also proposing a solution for that by creating a historical chain of writers. They are trying to form a whole history of feminist writers from the very beginning itself. They are trying to revive the history from a feminist perspective, or female perspective. And they are also experimental, self-contained, and connected to other female researchers. So they are, gynocriticism is also calling for a consortium of female writers, female critics, to come together and work together to recollect and to revive their history, which is lost in the traffic of actually the male-dominated literary critics. So that is they are the fundamental differences between these two categories of criticism. The first one is a feminist criticism, which is the traditional form of criticism, or the most prominent or dominant form of criticism that survives parallel to, or that exists parallel to the mainstream literary theory and criticism, which Showalter always calls as patriarchal, or as male-centered or Eurocentric. And her idea or her solution for that, or her proposition, is actually gynocriticism, which is totally different from the traditional feminist criticism. Okay, so keep in mind some of these points and some of the differences between these two categories of criticism. We'll move on to the next slide now. Okay. Now, feminist critique is male-oriented. According to feminist criticism, we have seen the points in feminist criticism, what actually feminist criticism does, different from the gynocriticism. And Ellen Showalter is actually claiming that feminist critic is a male-oriented critic. Feminist criticism is actually a male-oriented discourse of criticism. It studies what men have thought women should be, rather than what they actually felt and experienced. So that is one of the major acquisitions she draws upon the feminist critics, or the mainstream feminist criticism. She calls that she states that feminist criticism actually studies what men have thought women should be. If you're looking at a work which has been criticized in
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Excuse me, sir. Screen on enlarge you. Okay, thank you, sir. Yes.
Okay. Fine. It studies what men have thought women should be, rather than what they felt and experienced. And it needs long dependency upon male theoretician. Okay, I'll come back to that. So basically, she's telling why she calls feminist critique as male-oriented is that she puts forward this claim that none of these feminist critics or feminist criticism that existed up to her time, or that has been being practiced up to her time, actually doesn't bother about what women feel and experience in their life. They are not bothered, or they are not actually critically looking at the text to explore up to what extent female experience or female feelings and emotions are being expressed, genuinely expressed in literary text. Rather, they were looking at how men thought about women. How men thought that women should be, what men thought how women should be. That was the difference between, that was the major concern of the feminist critics. And that is why she calls feminist criticism as a male-oriented genre. And also, there she's telling that it needs long dependency upon male theoreticians, and there is a resistance to questioning. She poses this very problematic opinion in the context by telling that, by pointing out at major theoreticians like Derrida or post-structuralism, or psychoanalytical criticism, by pointing at all these major literary criticism or streams of criticism. She's calling them all patriarchal criticisms or male-centered criticisms, and she's telling that if the condition of feminist critics is so pathetic that if feminist critics want to make a proposition, they will have to depend heavily upon these theoreticians. If they want to make a comment upon the psychological aspects of a character, a female character, they will have to definitely draw upon the psychoanalytical criticism and the veterans like Lacan and Freud. So they are all male. So she's telling the whole field of criticism is actually overflowed, or maybe actually inhabited by male critics and male theoreticians. And for a female critic to create something very original and create something very of their own, it's very difficult. So she's telling that it is a very difficult position for the female writers to create their own theories and draw upon their own opinions, since the whole field of theory is actually flooded with or inundated with the male theoreticians and male theories, male-oriented theories. And it has a tendency to naturalize women's victimization by making it a obsessive topic of discussion. And she's also putting forward another major controversial claim that all these male-centered theories, the so-called post-colonial theory, if you're taking, or deconstruction, post-structuralism, all these theories are actually dealing with the problems of women. But what they are doing is actually victimizing women by making it an obsessive topic of discussion. So she's telling it that, she's looking at the way the literary theory is treating the problems of women as actually a process of victimization, as a process of very explicit victimization, by making them a topic of discussion over and over again. So that's why she's telling the whole scenario of literary theory, which is dominated by male, is actually proposing a feminist criticism also, which is male centered. And now coming to the gynocriticism, which is the alternative she proposes. She's telling that gynocriticism construct a female framework for analyzing women's literature and create a model based on female experience. So two things they are actually proposing, gynocriticism. First one, constructs a female framework for analyzing women's literature. They are offering, gynocriticism is offering a female framework. Framework is very important because every theory needs to have a framework. So gynocriticism, first of all, on the ground level, at the first place, provides a framework, or coins or conceptualizes a framework for analyzing women's literature and creates a model, a model based on the female experience. So experience is very important for gynocriticism, and gynocriticism is always sticking on the idea of female experience, how female experience is being expressed in various works. With its utmost genuinity, with its utmost originality. That is what they are seeking for. Okay, how is it possible, and what is to be done for gynocriticism to to attain this goal, to make it practice, to materialize these observations and ideas? What are the ways to do that? So by discussing that, she is telling the gynocriticism needs to reconstruct the past. The first thing that they want to do to come back to a criticism of their own is to reconstruct the past, that I have already mentioned passively in the beginning of this class. they are actually calling gynocriticism is actually, or Elaine Showalter is actually calling for a reconstruction of the past, rediscover the female writers and their works, and establish a continuity of female tradition. That's very important. Actually, it is in this context only I was talking about isolation of female writers, how female writers from the past are being looked at in isolation. They're always being looked at in isolation. I have also made examples about Emily Bronte and also Bronte sisters and also Jane Austen, Fanny Brownie. Fanny Brownie is another example. Fanny Brown, and also I don't get many writers now. Okay, all writers. You look at all writers in the history, female writers. They are all treated in isolation. So she's claiming that through gynocriticism, or gynocriticism is actually purpose to have to establish a continuity of the female tradition by recovering the past or rediscovering the past. This act of parallel female literary history will challenge the orthodox literary history and their canons in turn. So what is once this parallel female literary history is refurbished, or once it's constituted, it will definitely pose much challenge to the orthodox literary history and their canons. So studying female writers in isolation was a historical farce, and once they are placed in a larger context of innumerable female writers, it will make visible the patterns and phases in female literary tradition. So she's telling that once, if the gynocriticism is successful in creating a female in recovering the female tradition and creating a female history, very very expanded female history, she's telling that uh, it will be it will definitely be visible the patterns and phases in female literary tradition. That means the various patterns and various phases in the female literary tradition will definitely become visible. So that tradition, that pattern and phases in female literary tradition is now absent, because we don't have any idea about how many phases we had for the female writers in the history. There was no evidence, there was no critical study happened upon that. What are the patterns of writing for them? If you're looking at if you're asked to if you're looking at the patterns of writing of male writers, we have plenty of examples. Like neoclassical people wrote in neoclassical style. Victorian had a style. I mean, Victorian literature had a very peculiar style. But these all styles we are referring to actually belonging to the male literature or male centered writers. They are all referred with along with the male, or referred to the male writers. None of the female writers, even though if there are some of the female writers were very prominent at that point of time, they were also associated with these male-centered literary traditions only. They were actually placed within this male-centered literary tradition. So she was telling that by recovering history, a very peculiar and unique female pattern of writing and various phases of female literary tradition can be also located. So. Okay. Now, as we were talking about the various phases of female literature, various phases of female literary tradition, she herself has put forward uh, three classifications of three classifications in the phases of the development of female literature. Actually, she proposes this idea in literature of their own, a literature of their own, and she passively looking, I mean, giving comments upon the same idea in this essay also. According to Elaine Showalter, there are mainly three phases for feminist literature of female writers, of feminist literary criticism. The first one is feminine, second one is feminist, third one is female phase. Feminine, feminist, and female stages. Okay. In the first stage, that is feminine stage, we have 1840 to 1880. They actually, there we find the effort to equal the intellectual achievements of male culture and internalizing the male assumptions about female nature. So they were actually trying to find some equal grounds of equality in matters of intellectual achievements with the male culture. That means basically imitation, nothing else. So they were trying to imitate what the major male-oriented patriarchal literary canons were doing at that point of time, in order to find some ground for their own. So that was a pity condition, but that was the way actually feminist criticism began with. And they were also internalizing the male assumptions about female nature. So if you're looking at writings of that time, especially Victorian writings, they are referring to. She's referring to Victorian writings. we can find that the female nature, most probably we find in these works, are actually assumptions of the patriarchal system or Victorian morality only. We don't find a very genuine expression of the female nature in any of this of these writings. Most of them are like expressions of the Victorian morality and what Victorian morality was talking about women, that how Victorian morality conceived the very idea of male and female. So that was a very first phase, and they used male pseudonyms, like in the case of Bronte sisters, Arabelle, Acton Bell. That pseudonyms we have, George Eliot we have. So this phase in this phase. They use, I mean, major female writers, they use pseudonyms. And the feminist content was oblique, displaced, ironic, and subversive. I mean, the very core feminist idea was not much clear. They were overtly placed in their works. They were not the prime content to be discussed. And coming to the second phase, that is feminist phase, that stretches across uh, 4 decades, 1880 to 1920. And one of the major concern was winning of votes, or maybe you can call the suffrage, female suffrage, voting rights. So this was a fight for the rights of women, basically. More than imitation, women are historically enabled to reject accommodating postures of femininity and to use literature to dramatize the ordeals of wronged womanhood. So this was a time of resistance. We call it generally as a time of resistance. And this was also the time of modernism. And this was also significantly the time of Virginia Woolf and all. I mean, they started to write at that point of time. So we find this resistance in their literature too. But basically, women are they have held this idea that women are historically enabled to reject the accommodating postures of femininity. The accommodating postures of femininity എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ the femininity that was defined by the patriarchal culture, the society, and to use literature to dramatize the ordeals of wronged womanhood. I mean, they started to use literature to expose how wrongly womanhood was portrayed in literature previously, how wrongly womanhood was portrayed by the society, and how wrongly womanhood was portrayed by the religion, culture, society, fashion, all these things. So this was a phase of resistance. This is also a phase of fighting for the rights of women. And moving to the third phase, that is the phase that Elaine Showalter was speaking about. That is a phase she found us more revolutionary and more changing, more radical. That is called a female phase. That began with 1920s, and its major proposition was the rejection of imitation. That imitation we find in the feminine phase, the first phase. So they rejected that and protest. And also they rejected the feminist second phase and turning towards the female experience as a source of art. So for the third phase writers like Virginia Woolf and all, or Dorothy Richardson, we find that their resource of writing, or the repository of material, was actually their female experience for a certain extent. Not they did not write for resistance, or they did not write by imitating the male writers or male runners. Rather, they were trying to portray the female experience in more detailed manner, the personal, the very closed experiences of women, the psychological dimensions of a woman's subjectivity, identity, and gender roles they were actually trying to portray. So that phase was very significant, according to Elaine Showalter. As a part of it, Dorothy Richardson and Virginia Woolf thought in terms of male and female sentences and divided their works into masculine journalism and feminine fictions. Okay, they are passive tendencies. Now, how did feminist criticism addressed to this rediscovery of female tradition? So when it comes to the third phase, what we find was the major phase of feminist criticism only, not gynocriticism. Gynocriticism only comes later with Elaine Showalter. So this time of Virginia Woolf was actually the time of feminist criticism only, and they were actually doing what I was telling in the beginning. Okay, even though they were doing in their writings, I mean, in literature, they were portraying their experience, their life experience as a woman in their critical works. That is very important. The difference should be very well understood. In their writings, they were writing, they were expressing their emotions and feelings and experiences. But rather in their critical works, they were more of more of belonging to the feminist criticism genre. Okay, that difference should be very specifically understood. That's why I'm reiterating that. And they revisited and subverted the ideologies like Marxism and structuralism. How did they progress actually? The feminist criticism at that point of time, how did they progress? They were actually looking at subverting and revising the ideologies like Marxism and structuralism by revisiting their vocabularies and methods to include variables of gender. I can put it in more in more clarity by telling that if you're looking at 1950s and 60s radical feminism, I'll call it radical feminism, we find that Marxism is actually fundamental to these radical feminists. They were they were learning terms and vocabularies from Marxism. And that is what Elaine Showalter mean by telling that these feminists of 40s and 50s actually revisited these ideologies by subverting their terms, subverting their vocabularies, and making it into their own terms and vocabularies. According to Showalter, it is unsatisfactory, and they should, as J. Mill stated, emancipate itself from the influences of accepted models and guide itself by its own impulses, and claims that feminist criticism has reached an impasse. So she is telling that feminist criticism, which has been there as a dominant critical discourse for centuries, has actually reached an impasse. I mean, there is no way in for feminist criticism, because she is telling that, quoting J.S. Mill, they have to stop looking at or depending upon the accepted models proposed to by accepted models here means those critical ideologies like Marxism, Marxist aesthetics, or psychoanalytical criticism. These are accepted models of theory. They should emancipate itself from the influences of accepted models and guide itself by its own impulses. So this its own impulse is what actually means when Elaine Showalter says that the experience of women should be expressed in literature, and the experience of women should be the content of criticism for feminist literary theory. So that is the difference. That is how actually Showalter brings in her idea or inserts his idea by pointing out the fallacies or pointing out the weaknesses or vulnerabilities of feminist criticism, which is the traditional form of criticism. Feminist criticism is a traditional form of criticism. Moving to Showalter's major claims about the contemporary criticism, which is masculine and objective, we have a number of ideas she points out to expose the contemporary literary criticism and its masculinity and its objective nature. The scientific criticism or new science of text based on linguistics, genetic structuralism, deconstruction, neoformalism, and deformalism, affective stylistics, psycho-aesthetics is as manly as nuclear physics, not intuitive, suggestive, but strenuous and impersonal. It creates a division between marketable and marginable. So here, by drawing a criticism, a strong objection against all these postmodern theories or theories of 1960s and 70s, like neoformalism, deconstruction, structuralism, genetic structuralism, computers, linguistics, advanced linguistics, deformalism. She is calling that, I mean, if you're looking at Showalter, we can see that she is against all these theoretical positions. All these theoretical positions she was living with. Basically the postmodern theories, and she was trying to bring an alternative for these theories by calling these theories, as I have already mentioned, as masculine theories that doesn't give any options or possibility for the female to express their emotions and experiences. So it creates, according to her, it creates marketable, and it creates a division between marketable and manageable. She calls these postmodern theories or the structuralist theories as marketable theories. They are more oriented upon the marketability, the saleability, whereas the marginable theories or marginal theories that are dealing with the marginal people, they are the feminist theories. They are the feminist theory that she calls into. So that division she is actually bringing into our attention. And in the academic sector, impacted by market specialization, has prioritized mastering of theory over reading books. And she is putting a very strong word of criticism upon theories by telling that these theories and the influence of these theories, basically the hype theory of 70s, has actually spoiled the habit of reading books. People especially those who claim to be specialized in theories, actually stop reading the books, actual literature, and they are returning back with much pride to literary theories. They are mastering literary theories, and they don't pay any attention to the actual literary works which needs to be read, because that is the treasure upon which only the theories make practical suggestions. Theory functions only upon literature and literature or artistic creations. So that ignorance which has been engendered by the theories she is trying to expose. Higher and lower criticism. Higher is scientific inquiry into forms and structures, whereas lower is content and interpretation. So here, form and structure ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത് സ്ട്രക്ചറലിസത്തെയാണ് ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്. She is criticizing structuralism by telling that structuralism is more of a scientific inquiry. And by embracing structuralism, it is also downplaying the content and interpretation part of the literary theory. And she's also proposing a very funny dichotomy by calling hermeneutics and hismeneutics. Hermeneutics and hermeneutics is a philosophy of a theory of interpretation, and at the same hismeneutics she calls hermeneutics as hismeneutic. Hismeneutics in the sense his means male gendered. His, that is a pronoun for for male. So she is funny. I mean, she makes fun of this um, literary practice called hermeneutics. Okay, why there cannot be a synthesis between feminism, Marxism, and structuralism? She has points for that too. Why feminism, Marxism, and structuralism? Why theories, high theories, or other theories and feminism can get along with? Why can't it get along? Scientific criticism believes, because she's telling that Marxism or either Marxism or structuralism, they all believe in scientific criticism. I mean, way of scientific criticism by relieving itself of subjectivity. They are against subjectivity. They want scientific criticism means more of objective contents, objective ideas, objective solutions, whereas feminism asserts whereas feminism asserts subjectivity. It asserts subjectivity. And she is giving an example of a work of an anthology of a recent publication, The Authority of Experience. The experience of women can go mute or disappear in both Marxism and structuralism. She's telling that in Marxism and both structuralism, the experience aspect of women, I mean, that aspect of women can go mute and disappear. Experience is not emotion, and protest against the equation of feminine with irrational. She is also telling that experiences should never be considered as emotion. Both are different. They are far more different. And they are also putting forward a protest against the equation of feminine with irrational. Feminine should not be considered to be irrational. Seek the repressed message of women in history, anthropology, and psychology. Okay, she is also telling that feminism is actually something that seeks repressed messages of women in history, anthropology, and psychology, and other fields. Okay, the theoretical impasse in feminist criticism is, നമ്മൾ already discuss ചെയ്തതിനകത്ത് വരുന്ന കുറച്ച് കാര്യങ്ങളാണത്. The theoretical impasses in feminist criticism. എന്തൊക്കെയാണ് ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് ക്രിറ്റിസിസത്തിന്റെ പ്രാക്ടിക്കൽ ആയിട്ട് ഡിഫിക്കൽട്ടീസ് എന്തൊക്കെയാണെന്ന് നമ്മൾ കാണുന്നത്? They divide the consciousness among feminists. I mean, one of the major menaces in feminist criticism is a divided consciousness among feminists. On the one hand, she's telling that she's claiming that feminist critics are divided in consciousness. How? On the one hand, they are in a tradition which teaches women to be rational, marginal, and grateful. That is the tradition which we follow with the theories, which we follow by calling into the great masters of theory. That is what she's referring to here. I mean, when we are following the mainstream theory, literary theory, we are actually following the masters in literary theory. And that is what she calls us following. That's what she calls us being rational and marginal and grateful. On the other side, sisters in a new other side, sisters in a new women's movement, which engenders another kind of awareness and commitment, which demands that we renounce the pseudo success of token womanhood and the iconic mask of academic debate. That is other thing. I mean, the other thing is just opposite of that. That means the other thing, the other field, or the other area is an understanding of or the consciousness that we are actually following a pseudo success. I mean, we are actually upholding a pseudo success of token womanhood. The kind of womanhood that is being propagated by the mainstream theories for a long time is actually a pseudo womanhood, and that awareness that these things that we uh, claim to have in the very particular domains, the mainstream domains of pseudo womanhood, that is another awareness. So people in feminist criticism, critics in feminist criticism are splitted among these two. I mean, between these two fields of thinking actually. So that is why she has called that they have a divided consciousness. Feminist critics have a divided consciousness, and what is to be done for that, to get rid of that. The task of feminist critic is to find a new language, a new way of reading that can integrate our intelligence and our experience, our reason and our suffering, our skepticism and our vision. So she's calling for a new language, to find a new language in the sense, not a language as such, a linguistic language as such, but she's calling for identifying the pattern of female writing, identifying this a new framework for female writing that is already there. We have to explore it by analyzing the literature of female. I mean, analyzing in the history of female writing. So that's what she's calling for. She invites Critias, Poeticus, and Plutarch to share with it. That's a very ambitious, I mean, call actually. I welcome by invoking all these very famous, very veteran historians to part with their attempt. I mean, the feminists, the gynocritics attempt to rediscover the history from a feminist perspective. Okay, with that it ends. If you have any doubts, you can ask me now.
Sir, second last